Good morning, good day, good evening, or good night, depending on where you are. Welcome to my presentation. I'm Alexander Schouten, together with I'm from Tilburg University, and together with colleagues from Hogeschool Rotterdam in the Netherlands. We conducted a study about a thing we call robomorphism. More specifically, it's a study in which we examine the effects of telepresence robots on between-student cooperation. Well, what is a telepresence robot? Well, a telepresence robot is a robot that enables robot-mediated human interaction. It's communicating with someone else via a robot that represents you. You see this more and more, especially in classroom settings where sick or children who are in general not able to come to class can cooperate with fellow students and fellow children too in their classroom activities. This is what we call robot-mediated human interaction. And usually the children are represented by a robot. Sometimes there's a screen, sometimes there is no screen. Usually there is sound, so people can actually talk through the robot with others. Others can talk back, of course. And on the end of the person who is controlling the robot, they usually have a screen so they can see their fellow classmates. Sometimes there are also other options, so robots can display emotions or can turn or move. So there are kind of different versions. So as you see here, these are two, I must say, very ugly types of telepresence robots or telepresence machines. But there also are rather new ones, which actually look like a robot with anthropomorphic qualities. For example, AV. AV is a robot developed by a Norwegian company, which is also used for in-class participation, which has a kind of a nice emotion-like anthropomorphic quality to it. So there's no camera, so it's specifically designed for children who are sick or disabled, so people don't see the children, but the children can see into the classroom, and they can talk through the robot, they can move the head, and they can display emotions. And this is the robot we used for our study. So what did we want to do? Well, if you look at the use of a robot, it's a nice addition to a classroom, but of course it's kind of expensive. People don't know how to use a robot, so we don't really know if it's a good idea. Also, there are way cheaper options available for in-classroom participation. For example, WhatsApp video call or Skype, or just a laptop with video conferencing, or Zoom, as I'm currently using. There's also very little research into the effectiveness of telepresence robots on group work and cooperation. So most studies are really design and case studies in classrooms, but there's actually no experimental research testing if telepresence robots could actually be an addition and could facilitate cooperation. So what we wanted to do is experimentally compare mediated student interaction supported by a telepresence robot versus mediated student interaction supported by video conferencing. Well, why theoretically? Well, as I said, the case studies have been done, and they usually show a positive effect on social interaction with peers and engagement in schoolwork when using a telepresence robot compared to, for example, video conferencing. And there are several reasons for it. So the main reason, and the reason we also investigate in this study, is that there is more social presence. There are more feelings of co-presence and social presence when interacting via a robot. So the person who interacts with the robot feels present in the classroom because he or she knows he or she is represented in the classroom, and the persons in the classroom can see the robot. So there may be more social presence going on there. On the other hand, we thought there may be something called, well, that we call robomorphism. So basically, what is robomorphism then? Well, robomorphism is the opposite of anthropomorphism. So anthropomorphism is the projection of human-like features on robots. And we thought, well, if you communicate through a robot, then the opposite may happen. And this is based on theory such as the machine heuristic by Sundar, which says that we project like more objective, rational qualities on machines. So we thought if you communicate through a robot, that may also happen to the person communicating through the robot. So it's feelings of communicating with a robot instead of a human, treating the other more like a machine and a human, etc. So this is what we wanted to investigate. So these are our hypotheses, but it's more easy to see in this model. So we thought that if you communicate via a telepresence robot, AP1, it would lead to more co-presence and more social presence, but also to more robomorphism. And that could have a differential effect on the ability to cooperate. So a negative effect to robomorphism because you treat the other like a machine, and a positive effect to co-presence or social presence. So that's what we aim to investigate. So we did a study among 122 people, 51 groups of 2 students, all from the Rotterdam University of Applied Science. And they had to do a task in which they had to make a decision about how AI could be used to solve fake news issues. We had 2 conditions. So one condition in which participants communicated via a WhatsApp video call. They were, of course, located in separate rooms, and one in which one participant was seated at a desk and communicated with the telepresence robot at the opposite end of the desk. The one controlling the robot had a tablet that the person could use to control the robot. So we measured cooperation in terms of satisfaction, communication warmth, and identification. And we had, as mediators, we had social presence and robomorphism. So we devised our own scale with the items. I felt like I was interacting with a robot. I felt like my interaction partner, my partner was a real person, which is reversed, and 3 other items, which together formed a very good scale. So what did the results show? Well, as we kind of expect, we found no main effects on the outcome variable, so no main effects on satisfaction, communication, and identification, but we did find an effect on the mediators. So we did find that people in the telepresence condition with the robot experience more co-presence, but also more robomorphism. You can see this in the table, in which you can see that compared to WhatsApp, which is the red bar, you see more social presence in the telepresence condition for both the one who is controlling the robot and who is interacting with the robot. For robomorphism, we see something similar, but of course we see that the one who is talking to the robot, the receiver, experiences more robomorphism than the one controlling the robot, though the one controlling the robot also experiences more robomorphism than the control condition and WhatsApp condition. So the results basically confirm our expectations. So all interaction effects, which is using process, and all interaction effects were significant. So we did find a negative effect via robomorphism on cooperation and a positive effect via co-presence. Quite surprising is when we look specifically, and when we compare specifically the person controlling the robot versus the person interacting with the robot, so in only the telepresence condition, we find no effects of robomorphism, only effects via co-presence, which is a bit weird because we would expect that the one who is interacting with the robot would experience more robomorphism than the one who is interacting through the robot. But that was not the case, and that was a bit unexpected. But of course, it could be that the one who's controlling the robot also has a kind of an idea that the interaction is more robot-like because he is more or less in the robot. So what does this mean? So first of all, robomorphism may actually be a thing. So it could be an interesting concept in future research and something interesting to take into account when you have people who interact through a robot or through a telepresence robot or interact through some kind of avatar. So that may have positive consequences, but they may also have the consequence of people seeing one interacting through an avatar or robot more as a machine than as a person, which I think is quite an interesting concept for future studies. Moreover, we find differential mediating effects via co-presence, social presence, and robomorphism. So telepresence robot may indeed enhance cooperation in the classroom, but only if we can mitigate the effects of robomorphism. So that is it in a nutshell. There's a full paper, of course, available, which you can read for further reference. And I want to thank you very much for this presentation.